welcome to House Einstein Podcast 46. I am Osman Parvez with House Einstein, and with me is Hamish Crabb.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. We've got a great one in store for you guys.
We're super excited you're here. Yeah. And before we get into depth, we'll just remind you that this podcast is entertainment. Yes, our attorneys made us say that. And if you are a client of House Einstein, just pick up the phone and call us when you need real estate advice. And if you're looking for an agent to represent you, you can find us at houseeinstein.com. We cover markets from Denver to Fort Collins and into the foothills, as well as some of the resort markets. We don't cover everywhere in Colorado, at least not yet, but we cover a lot of the Front Range and many of the resort areas. And we also have great relationships with agents throughout the state, so we might be able to give you a referral if you are looking for someone outside of our footprint.
Yeah, our footprint continues to grow, and until it grows all the way, we've got great connections.
Grows all the way. I'm not sure what that means, but...
And until it fully fills out, until we get all of Colorado, every single county, no.
Until we reach full maturity in the state. But we are actually over 10 years old, which is kind of exciting. I never really even celebrated that as a milestone. As a brokerage, we've been around. And prior to this brokerage, I founded another one here in Boulder, and I've worked for other brokerages, including Remax and a boutique on Nantucket. My background prior to real estate was financial analysis, and I founded this company. Our mission at House Einstein is really simple. We are here to help you make a smarter real estate decision and hopefully entertain you, at least in this podcast. Not so much if you're a client, although you might be slightly entertained too by our antics.
Sometimes we get decent feedback. So hello to clients that are listening and former clients that are listening. I know a few still are. Absolutely,
and deeply appreciate their comments, shared privately mostly, but sometimes publicly. And it really is the cherry on top of putting together this podcast. And if you aren't a client, again, just visit us at houseeinstein.com. You'll find out a lot about the brokerage. And let's move on to talking about the topics of the day.
Yeah. Well, what do we have?
Here's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about market conditions. I just gave a presentation to my Rotary Club about what's happening in the market, including a discussion of the coming changes that buyers and sellers can expect from the settlement of the NAR commissions lawsuit, which we've talked about before, but it's becoming clearer and clearer what's about to happen. We're going to hype up a couple of our listings that are coming on the market that we think you should know about. And then we're going to talk about a couple of recent sales, specifically in the city of Boulder. Again, we cover markets outside of Boulder, but we like to really go deep into Boulder itself. And then we're going to touch on a couple of news articles, including our headline. And it's really not a news article as much as a discussion. The news articles feed into this topic of discussion, and that's what's about to happen with real estate and AI. What can we expect to happen? What do we think? What do Hamish and Osman think?
Yeah. What's our take?
What's our take? Here's our not so hot, but here's our take
right.
on what we think's about to happen, and what you as a buyer or seller or maybe an investor in one of these many companies that are popping up, all these tools that are popping up, how that's going to power the future of real estate. And then we will tell you something you probably don't know. That's our segment, Tell Me Something I Don't Know. That's how we're going to wrap up this podcast. And in particular, we're going to talk about the self-regulation of the real estate industry. And then we'll wrap it up.
Perfect. Sounds like a solid day. It's a pretty warm Wednesday afternoon, so shall we get to it?
It's a gorgeous Wednesday afternoon. I thought it was going to rain on me. I had to go to Longmont twice today, which is this morning was kind of a crazy day, but got out on the bike, which was fun.
Oh, nice.
And at least turned it into something adventurous. And it started to rain on me on the way back. I thought I was going to get soaked, but it's cleared up again and looks beautiful outside.
Yeah,
there's a saying.
Here in Westminster, we've been threatened with thunderstorms all day, but nothing yet, so who knows?
There's a saying about weather in Colorado, and that's if you don't like it, wait 15 minutes.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right.
Yeah. Well,
let's jump into it. We'll try to keep this to under an hour and a half. I think it's been wishful thinking that we could do this in an hour. There are some podcasts that are that short, but as we get more into the swing of our podcasts, this is podcast 46. Our podcasts are getting a little longer, but I think that's also because we're going a little more in depth, and hopefully that's something that our listeners enjoy in the House Einstein podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one, usually when we do listing hype, we obscure the address, but on this one, are we going to say it?
We're going to talk about it when we get there. And the reason we're going to talk about it is because it should be live by the time you hear this. That's our intention. That's our plan. I think that in the spirit of the regulation of how coming soons are supposed to be managed, we're in compliance. To the best of our knowledge, this should be on the market fully tomorrow. Yeah. And showings to begin fully Friday. That's our plan with our sellers. So I think we can fully declare that address. But let's talk about market conditions first.
Oh, right. I was wondering why you were dancing around. I completely missed the market conditions. Okay.
That's okay. Yeah. So market conditions. My Rotary Club, Boulder Valley Rotary, I've taken a leave of absence from the club just because I'm so busy and need to focus. And between this being peak season and all the new listings and buyers that we have as a company, they come first. And I love Rotary, and I've been on the board of the Rotary Club, and I believe in its mission of service above self, and I believe in the four-way test. That's something that maybe more real estate agents should take to heart, and you can look that up yourself. But they invited me back to give a presentation, and it's sort of funny because the last time I gave a presentation in Rotary was either the summer of 2005 or the summer of 2006, just as the market was peaking. And I had been deep in the world of analysis, and I put together a really detailed presentation showing Case-Shiller and how high prices had gotten, how far above normal. And this was the peak of bubble activity. And I also was giving this presentation about how Boulder was not as much of a bubble as places like Phoenix and Las Vegas. And one of the hallmarks of a bubble is a high volume of transactions. And in those markets, people were flipping contracts and making crazy amounts of money, not even taking possession of homes. And the transaction volume had exploded. And here in Boulder, we were seeing inventory at a very high level. I remember 500, 600 homes on the market.
Jeez.
And today, inventory has only reached close to 300. And so it's one of these things where, and what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the presentation so you can actually click a link, go to YouTube. We haven't been publishing the show notes on our blog, Hamish. We probably should go back to doing that. I don't know why we stopped doing that, but we should probably go back and publish our show notes so that people can find it more easily and not have to go to YouTube. But in the YouTube description, you will find a link for sure that contains the PowerPoint, so you can follow along. There's charts from
not
Fannie
just
and
YouTube
Freddie.
Either, SoundCloud, wherever you're listening.
Oh, okay. Wasn't aware it was on SoundCloud. So you could find these links. The Rotary presentation, I didn't have a lot of time to put this together, so I just used the charts from Case-Shiller once again. And I also used some charts from our MLS. And of course, the presentation is not complete without actually hearing what I had to say. But in short, we're once again seeing a tale of two markets. We're once again seeing a pileup of inventory at price points ahead north of 3 million. So back then in 2005 or 6 when I did that presentation, it was more like 1 million and up was luxury. Today it's more like 3 and up is luxury. At least here in the city of Boulder. And I understand other markets are a little different, but the pileup is really starting to become obvious for buyers and sellers above 3 million. So if you're thinking about listing your home in if you own a home that you think is worth over 3 million in Boulder County, you really better be careful about who you choose to represent you and making sure your listing is competitive, because you have a lot of competition. It's almost 90% of homes in that price segment are not under contract, meaning they've been on the market and they are not finding a buyer. It's only a tiny sliver of the market that's attracting buyers. So you really have to have your marketing dialed in and your pricing dialed in. But the opposite is somewhat true under at the entry level, which in Boulder is really for a single family house is just under $1 million. It's like $750,000 to $1 million is now the entry level, And in that price range, it's closer to 40% of the market is under contract. And when things were really frothy in Boulder, particularly in the summer of 2022, it was like everything went under contract right away. It was a great time to dump your really crappy house. Like if you had a house that was in a really bad location, that was the market to get rid of it in. And I said that at the time. But what I'm seeing is a repeat of 2006 with some exceptions. So prices haven't started to decrease, but the pileup is happening. It's a top-down market correction that appears to have started. And it is not I don't think it's going to become even remotely like what 2006 to 2009 was. So back then when the market corrected, and I have all this data, some of which is still available on the blog, but I'm happy to walk people through it. I obsessed over this. And what occurred during that roughly 2.5 to 3 year time period was the high end saw prices decrease 20 to 40%. And those 40% price corrections were very limited. Like there were a few of them though, particularly downtown and new build. But more typically, we saw 20 to 25% price corrections at the high end, and that occurred throughout that duration of 2.5 to 3 years. But the entry level only saw a correction of about 5%, and that occurred in the summer at the very bottom, before the market immediately started correcting again the other way. So we're starting to see the same type of pattern with increasing inventory, decreasing sales, and prices that are more or less skidded somewhat sideways and then have started to just recently climb again. And that's the really fast version of that 35-minute presentation I gave to the Rotary Club. And then we jumped into the commission's lawsuit. So Hamish, do you have any questions or thoughts about what you're seeing as you
nothing crazy. You mentioned, I think, as sign of a bubble is like crazy transactions or like a ton of those.
High volume of transactions.
We're not seeing that right currently. That was pretty much.
Although this month, so when you look at that Rotary presentation, you'll see that the city of Boulder has a lot of volatility in the sales volume chart versus the case Schiller is really a price chart, not a volume. But when you look at Boulder County, it's far more steady. So you see it, that's just inherent with a small sample size.
Right.
But we're not seeing a massive increase in sales volume. We're seeing a slight increase in sales volume. There's no frenzy that's typical. There's no bubble in real estate happening right now. In fact, the super low inventory at most price points, not the high end, is keeping things pretty dampered. And the tale of two markets is really about the price sensitivity of those people buying a monthly payment. You know, rates have doubled. They've gone from 3% to over 7%.
Yeah.
Since COVID.
I wouldn't be in the house that I am today. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Where rates are today, and you got the seller to buy down your rate. Insurance costs have doubled. Property maintenance costs have probably doubled too, although I didn't find statistics to prove it before the presentation, but I'm pretty sure that's what's happened. And property taxes are up about 50%, and they lag. So they may still keep going because they're a lagging indicator. And meanwhile, prices have not dropped. And the reason they have not dropped, and this is in the presentation as well, is the expansion of our money supply. But as a response to COVID, the government injected massive amounts of liquidity into the economy, and that money is still out there. There's been a slight reduction. So if you look at that presentation, you'll see M2, and M2 is cash and cash equivalents, things that can quickly be converted into cash. And it's astounding. I don't have the chart in front of me right now. I probably should have opened the PowerPoint presentation. But I feel like it went from 16 trillion to like 22 trillion and has come back down to like 19 trillion, 19, 20 trillion. Like it's come down a little bit, but there's still so much money sloshing around our economy. And so what we're seeing on the ground in real estate is some buyers are coming in and they have equity portfolios. They're retirees or close to retirement. Maybe they've sold their company, but they've gotten a lot of their wealth is in the stock market, and they're moving it into real estate assets. So they're converting,
it's a transfer
numbers on
of wealth, right?
It's not a transfer of wealth. That's usually described as a generational thing.
Okay.
It's a very different concept.
Yeah.
But it's a movement from one asset class to another asset class. And they're moving it from an asset class, frankly, that's sort of funny money, right? Because that's what the stock market can feel like.
It's intangible, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bank statement, okay? It's an
Numbers
account
on
statement.
a screen.
that says you have $12 million of net worth in this account as in a retirement account or whatever, and you're moving that to a real estate asset that you can actually touch, you can live in, like it's tangible. It's brick and mortar.
You can improve.
And so, well, you can improve too yourself. You have control over. There's all sorts of other concepts. The control premium of actually being able to maintain this property. I mean, the real estate as an asset class is very different than the stock market. For every major stock market, for every major company, there's a cadre of analysts covering it. And for real estate, there isn't. That's one of the reasons I got into this business to begin with. Is that I was like, wow, there's so much lack of knowledge, and it's so smoke and mirrors in the marketing world of real estate. And at the time, Zillow didn't exist. With there's Zestimate, and the data was really bad. The data is still really bad, but at least you can see some data. It's possible to find it. There's a little
more transparency.
Yeah. I mean, the Zestimate is so ridiculously wrong, but at least you can look at something, right? You can pretend like your home has 4 Wall Street analysts covering it. I mean, it's nonsense.
Oh, especially you go into Realtor.com, right? They've got like 4 or 5 different indicators that they.
I mean, take your pick. Realtor.com, Zillow, Redfin. They all have different valuation models, and they're all garbage.
Yeah.
And
CoreLogic, Quantarium, and Collateral Analytics.
Yeah. Our favorite agent, who shall remain nameless on the pod, who priced our listing at 2.25 using an algorithm, eventually it slid down to whatever 1.6 something.
But wasn't that what you would have initially priced at all to begin with?
Well, close,
right
actually.
Around,
So I was thinking 1.7. That's a different. I don't want to get too into the details of this deal because it hasn't closed, and I don't want to be involved in it at all till after it's closing.
Good point,
but she used an algorithm to convince the sellers to hear what they wanted to hear. Well, to tell them what they wanted to hear. We've talked about this before in the podcast. So if somebody is showing, if you're thinking about hiring a listing agent and you've invited them into your home and they've toured the house and you ask them, what do you think my house is worth? What are you going to price it at? You're asking them the wrong question. You need to ask them how they're pricing your home. And if their answer involves algorithms and doesn't involve seeing competitors firsthand, choose a different listing agent. They don't know the market themselves. They're relying on telling you what you want to hear. And that's a really it feels good because you hope it's true, but you're the one that bears the cost in terms of months on market and eventually a lower price than you would have gotten because people think something's wrong with the house when it's been on the market 9 months. So ask how they're pricing the home and ask how they are keeping you informed of the competitors throughout the duration of the listing agreement. And it should be weekly. Maybe every other week, but it should be attempted at least weekly to give you an update on the competitors. And we're doing that now for every listing. So we're getting a little in the weeds here, but the tale of two markets. So we're seeing cash buyers show up, and these people they don't care what interest rates are. Okay? They're moving money from an asset class that they probably feel is overvalued and high risk to an asset class they can live in and they can show off to their friends and they can invite their family to spend the holidays in that is much more tangible. And so that type of buyer, that particular market of buyer, whether it's a vacation home or a primary home or their fourth vacation home, they are not affected by interest rates. The monthly payment buyer is, and those types of buyers tend to be more at the entry and mid levels of the market. Those people are very much affected, but not equally. And in some places like Boulder, where there's much more affluence and generational affluence with parents and grandparents helping people put down payments together to buy homes, they're less sensitive to high rates. And I think when rates finally turn the corner, which is expected to occur later this year, we're going to see all that pent-up. We're going to see a lot of pent-up rate-sensitive buyers suddenly jumping in. So the question is, so even though there's some similarity to the market analysis, the only thing that's really similar is I got invited to Rotary right as the markets are turning. But we're not talking about a bubble correction. We're talking about a market that's skidded sideways, and monetary expansion is keeping afloat. And at some point, when rates drop, the market's going to start growing again in price. So that's the quick and dirty. Yeah. And Hamish is like, "That's not quick, dude. You've been talking about it too long."
We're 15 minutes in. No, it's the age-old supply and demand, and demand hasn't gone anywhere, and supply hasn't really increased at all. I mean, like, yeah, there's more inventory on the market, but actual supply, houses total, hasn't really changed. So that gating factor, those pesky rates, it reminds me of the Barbara Cohen news article that we covered a couple of pods back. Her saying that the prices are
Corcoran,
excuse me.
Yeah, Corcoran.
Who's Cohen?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know quite a few Cohens, but I don't know a Barbara Cohen.
Okay. Sounds
Corcoran,
like barbacoa, but anyway.
It does sound like barbacoa, but I don't think she'd appreciate that.
Probably not.
So let's now segue to the commission lawsuit, and that's the last slide of the presentation, and also something that we're going to talk more about with some of the articles in the news this week. But in short, that last slide, if you look at it, there is an image that I took personally, and a lot of people of your age, Hamish, and a lot of people even my age are not going to recognize what that thing is. And it's a little concrete structure that is an incinerator for trash. And most of the homes in developments in Boulder, including Martin Acres, including Baseline, all had these incinerators in the backyard. They had little concrete walkways to these little incinerators, and you put your trash in top, you lit it on fire, and you took the ashes out at the bottom. And they're mostly gone. They've mostly been completely demolished. But this house still had the original incinerator in the backyard.
Holy cow.
And I took a photo of it because and it came up while I was putting together this presentation, and it reminded me of the commissions lawsuit. Because what we've known for many decades to be the way business is done in real estate is likely about to change dramatically. And that's also the subject of our kind of the title of our podcast. The core topic is, what do we expect the future to look like with AI that's coming and with the big changes that are about to happen with this commissions lawsuit. And so we'll touch on the commissions lawsuit here, and then we're going to talk about AI when we get to the news. In the commissions lawsuit, what was agreed upon as a settlement was the removal of the buy-side commission from the multiple listing service. So right now I can show buyers...
the posted buy-side commission, right? Not the removal of commission altogether.
The commission still exists, or maybe it doesn't exist, but it's no longer a field in the MLS. And, well, that's what's about to happen in August. So, story time with Osman. When I first got into this industry, I was really astounded at the lack of professional skills of the brokers in the brokerage I worked for. I was hired to build a financial model and put together a pitch book and help raise capital for the Westmore Club on Nantucket. It's a wealthy private field club, similar to a country club. It doesn't have access to the water, so it's not a yacht club, but it has tennis courts, it has pools, it has activities for families to get together. And the idea there, just as a thesis, and I'll stop on Westmore after that, is that you're buying one of these multi-million-dollar luxury second homes. Well, you kind of want to meet the other people that are also buying these second homes, and you want to connect with them. Maybe you want your kids to meet with them. Maybe there's business opportunities or social opportunities, or your kids will marry each other. Like, this is a social club that amenitizes the purchase of these luxury second homes on Nantucket. And I was hired to put together the Excel model and put together the PowerPoint deck and help raise capital by the founder, one of the two founders of the Westmore Club. So I know a lot about that club, at least in its founding days. Yeah. And what I discovered, I was also asked to support the brokers. So in addition to doing that, I was asked to put together research for the brokers, help them do CMAs or opinions of value for real estate assets, because the class of buyers who were coming into the market were very much used to professional advisors. And what they were getting were mom and pops that did not offer professional advice. And so the thesis of that brokerage, which no longer exists, it was acquired, is that those types of buyers really will find this type of data analysis very attractive. And that was the other part of my job, was put that together. And what I discovered was these brokers, several of whom were still friends, but some of them really were questionably competent. And they were spending their time playing golf and being drunk and having a really nice life. And it was like a part-time thing for them.
Right.
Okay. And they were making a really good living. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting, because I had come from Wall Street and the investment world, and I was fascinated by this industry. I was like, well, this is really, really interesting. And
How can people enjoy their life and make money?
Well, make a lot of money and not even really do much. And I was like, what are they doing? And I finally realized that I have some pretty solid skills and should get my license. And I did before I left Nantucket. And I thought, it'll be easy to attract tons of buyers. And it turns out, and sellers, it would be easy to attract clients. It actually wasn't. So I was very arrogant when I first got into this business. And you might say I'm still a little arrogant, but I'll admit to my arrogance.
And you were you were practicing in Nantucket at the time, right?
Well, I did one deal on Nantucket, and then we moved to Boulder. I joined Remax Horizons Group, which became Remax Alliance, or was acquired by Remax Alliance, absorbed into the Borg of Remax Alliance. And what I discovered was it was a lot harder than I thought, especially not knowing people here, not having a network here. Having to build that from scratch was very difficult. And in the first year, we blew through all of our savings. I ran up our credit cards, and I ended up saying, okay, that was a fun summer, but I need a job-type job. I don't have that many leads to work.
Yeah.
So this is a long time ago. This is 2005. And I went to work for a company in Denver called Republic Financial. And how I got that job is a whole other story, and I don't want to bore the heck out of people. We have.
An older pod. I don't quite remember which one. Yeah.
I don't remember the pod either, but we've already talked about that topic, and I don't want to turn that into the topic of
Hammer
today.
down.
But it's just to illustrate how tough this industry is. But what I discovered was commissions are protected. So the NAR... And this is what I realized. Commissions are protected, and the competition is not particularly great. That was my thesis for jumping into this industry. And to see it come full circle, I fully expected commissions to drop and the business to get far more competitive 15 years ago. I was really astounded that the internet was not able to
disrupt
the cartel. Yeah. And that's what I called it. The NAR, I called it the cartel.
I was going to ask if you had a wonderful pet name for them or not.
I still call it the cartel. Yeah. In fact, in the bubble days, I even had a blog post I wrote about the then chief economist of the NAR, and what a clown he was. In fact, I used a clown picture as I was really
still a member, right?
Look, I'm still a member of the cartel, but that doesn't mean
the fact
they're
that
not,
they let you. Yeah.
Well, they can't. I don't think they can kick me out because I criticize them.
Yeah.
I joined the cartel because you have to, in order to be at the time, in order to be a realtor, to have access to all the privileges of the MLS and all the rest of that, there were a huge advantage to being in the cartel. Mm-hmm. Plus, the cartel was protecting commissions. The cartel was lobbying politicians and protecting the real estate business at full commissions of 6%. So this lawsuit came in, and the settlement, one piece of that settlement is this removal of the field on the MLS. And the net result of that is going to be very interesting. I talked about it at the Rotary presentation. We've talked about it in this podcast before too, but now it's becoming really evident that agents are going to have to justify their value. They're going to have to make it really clear, here are the menu of things I do that my competition doesn't do, and that's why I'm worth 3%. That's why I'm worth 2.8 or 2.5. That's what I get paid. That's currently the going rate of what sellers are offering. We know that for a fact because it's on the MLS. But once it's off the MLS, right, we're still going to have to be able to communicate that, look, this is actually a competitive rate. And the only way buyers are going to find out is by shopping you. Just like with the listing side, right? Mm-hmm. Listings are not publicly known what commissions are. I know some of our competition is discounting, but they're not really competition. They're poor agents. They're agents that do a crappy job. I'm sorry how else to put it, but they're really marginal. Right. 70% of the business is controlled by 30% of the agents, and the vast majority of those people are not heavily discounting their services. And I know we're competitive because I check and I talk to these other agents about what they're doing.
And title company.
So,
yeah.
And the title company has been very helpful in benchmarking because we have friends at Title that tell us what people are getting paid. It's helpful. And yes, we know some people are discounting, but the people discounting are generally, well, it's like what my mother told me. You get what you paid for. You get what you pay for in life, right?
No kidding.
right? Are you sure you want the discount agent? But the buy side is now going to have to be doing the same thing. And because buy side commissions are not financeable in a mortgage, unlike the sell side, right? Like the sell side, to get their money from it's all financed through the purchase price.
Yeah.
Entry-level buyers are going to be at a huge disadvantage, and they're likely to go it alone. And that means they're likely to be fleeced by the listing agent, because the listing agent's job is to fleece them. Their job is to maximize the sale price. So there's going to be, the whole reason buyer agency existed was to help buyers, prevent them from being taken advantage of.
Representation, right. Yeah. And I've talked to a lender or two recently, and it sounds like they're working on products as far as kind of buy-side commissions, but we'll see. I haven't seen anything tangible yet.
So
yeah.
In the meanwhile, and we'll talk about this as the article in the news, a lot of agents are getting out of the business. They were getting out of the business before, and a lot of the agents are getting, there's going to be an acceleration. And what I've seen in our real estate community is that agents that are new in the business, let's say arbitrarily have not been in the business for 5 years, they're uniformly scared. And that's largely because they know they can't justify their value as easily as the agent that's been doing it for 20 years, like I've been doing it.
Yeah.
And so I can walk buyers through all of the ways we're going to add value into the transaction.
We have a sheet.
Well, I finally put that together.
Yeah.
Here is what, we have a whole comparison of what you get with us versus someone else, what you're paying for. And so it's going to be fascinating. We'll talk more about it in the news and when we get to AI. All right. Is that enough on this segment, Hamish?
I think so.
Do you have anything to add?
We're 20 minutes into it, I think.
Okay. What do you have? Do you have anything to add on this?
No, you nailed it, man. You got it.
Okay. But have you heard anything different from the agents that you've talked to?
Mm-mm. I mean, I don't really talk to anybody outside of our team, right?
Well, that's not true. That's not true.
Well, not about business.
Well, you should. I mean, you've been part of lots of social events. You've also are communicating with the other side all the time in our transactions.
Yeah, mostly about deals. I don't really chat about much else.
That's true. Well, feel free to network and chat. Okay, so let's talk about listing hype.
All right. This is that address.
We promised you an address.
Yes.
What's the address, Hamish?
This one is 1185 1 Spruce Canyon Circle. And it's in Golden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
11851 Spruce Canyon Circle in Golden. It's part of Coal Creek Canyon. And there's a lot to know about mountain property. And we happen to know quite a bit about this one because I represented the buyers when they acquired the home. And I've represented these buyers 1, 2, 3. This is their fourth. I think this is their
5.
Fourth deal. It might be their fifth deal. I think I helped them with 2 houses in the city, and then they moved into Coal Creek Canyon. It's either deal number 4 or 5. And that feels really good. I deeply appreciate when people trust me, and that we've got such a healthy level of how we work together. We have a very healthy working relationship. It's so smooth. I mean, it's so smooth that we got started and basically are 3/4 of the way through producing our media and content without even having the listing agreement in place. And that is a no-no. You don't do that. But I'm like, these people, we're going to work our tail off for them. They know it. Mm-hmm. We know it. Let's just get to work. And I was like, hold up. Yeah. We're about to go live on the listing. How about we get that listing agreement in place? Yeah. Right, hold up.
We forgot.
And I think they took all of 30 seconds before they signed it in reviewing it, and that feels really good. But this particular property is set in a beautiful aspen glade, and it's also platted. So it feels like a mountain getaway, and it is log cabin style. It has a carriage house above the garage that's very functional as living space for guests, and it's just beautifully designed. The owners also invested in improving it. It clearly is or was their dream home, and the seller has expressed that multiple times, like how emotional selling this home has, even the idea of selling it has been. So this is not a home that somebody bought and treated poorly. They built a gorgeous tree house. They added an addition. And it's got a really cool spiral staircase. You can see it in the video, which I think we can throw in the link because this listing should be live. So you might as well throw your video, Hamish, that you've been working on into our listing description, it's a phenomenal house. We're finalizing pricing today and tomorrow. I think that if you've been looking for a mountain home in Coal Creek Canyon, close to Golden, close to Denver, you want that mountain home experience, but you don't want to be too far out of the city of Boulder or Denver, and you are looking for a home that really feels like it's in the Colorado mountains and is functional. Like, there's so much, frankly, undesirable homes in the mountains that you probably shouldn't buy.
Yeah.
This is not one of them. We've been looking for a while to find this particular house, and it's cozy, it's charming, it just works really, really well for a wide variety of buyers. So we should have that on the market on Friday. Go for it.
Carriage house, does that incorporate into all of the bedroom bath count on the MLS, or is it a separate thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it should be added to the bedroom and bath count.
Okay. We're at, I think that makes it then a 4-bed 5-bath? 4-bed 3-bath?
So the tricky part of this listing is that the carriage house apartment bedroom is not separate from the kitchen and living space. It's a studio apartment. So technically, that's a 0-bedroom studio apartment.
Right.
But from a listing perspective, we don't want to list it as 0 because people will not realize that's a complete separate living unit.
We should list it.
It does have a closet. We should list it as a bedroom, even though technically that's incorrect. And we should disclose it in the broker remarks that the carriage house technically is not a conforming bedroom. And there's also a checkbox on the MLS for that, where you say, do all bedrooms conform? The answer is no, because it's not a big studio apartment is not its own bedroom. And you could argue, and basically what we want to do is make sure we don't create liability.
That's right, yeah.
For our seller. I mean, you'd have to be really disingenuous to say, hey, the bedroom count's wrong, I'm suing the seller. But those people are out there, so we have to put that additional
protect
disclosure
against
in the MLS. That's part of our job as listing agents, is to both market the property properly and also protect our clients as best as we can from litigious, from liability of this sort of silliness on the MLS.
Yeah, so it's a non-conforming 4-bedroom 3-bath, and it's super nice. It sits on a few acres. It's got its own kind of backyard shed. It's got the tree house. There's hammocks all around it. I mean, it's just a really nice place to be. And since I've been editing the video and seen it probably like 1,000 times at this point, it's fantastic. And there's a plethora of outdoor spaces. So if you're tired of whoever you're living with, you guys can go and enjoy the nature separately if you had to.
There's all these little places to go hang out on the property that is so cool. And I'll add one thing that most mountain property do not have, and that is a sense of community and neighborhood. So
kidding.
That is it is such a little pocket neighborhood. You get the same people walking their dogs and waving at you. Everyone waves when you drive by. It is typically when you think of a mountain property, you think of something that's kind of isolated from the neighbors. And in some cases, that's why people buy mountain property. That's sort of a rumor, right? Like people that buy mountain property don't want neighbors.
Right.
But there are some people that want that neighborhood feel. And this actually has it in the mountains. It's very cool.
Yeah. No, driving up and down, I was like almost shocked the amount of people that waved at me. I was like, am I just in like a familiar car or something? But I'd say like 90% of the people on that route waved. It was crazy. Yeah.
On the neighborhood streets, it's super friendly. Everyone knows everybody.
Yeah.
And they seem to really appreciate little kids too. That's something that I've noticed, is that the sellers' children run around the neighborhood, play with the neighbors, and they're welcomed in. That's really cool.
Yeah. Old feely, old timey stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll cover the other listings. Our other listing hype is there's still several new listings coming on for us in North Boulder. If you are looking for something in North Boulder, don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a couple of condos in Uptown Broadway, including a mixed use unit, and we've got a really, really cool house coming on the market it's right across the street from Wonderland Lake. That's going to be hitting very soon. It's there's some really cool listings, and they're all in the final stages of prep one's about to begin prep. 2 are in the final stages of prep. One's about to begin. So reach out to us if that's what you're looking for. If you're represented by an agent, have them reach out to us. But if you're not represented, call me directly.
Yeah.
I'm happy to chat with you about it. And final question, do we cover outside of Boulder? Absolutely. One of our listings, the Spruce Canyon Circle listing, is in Golden. I was approached by 2 sellers in Lakewood in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
One of them decided to just not rent their house. The other one says maybe next year, but they're not even, so City of Boulder is not our only domain.
Wheelhouse, yeah.
Yeah,
we go all over, and I mean Sophie's Denver specialized almost at this point, and Ian's gone up to Longmont this year. So have you, I think, and yeah, we've got a footprint and then some.
Well, Ian lives in Majestic Heights. He knows tons about that neighborhood, and both Ian and Sophie are Boulder natives. So that is something that the vast majority of people are not, and they really know the school system because they went to school here.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so it's very hard to compete with that. Sophie did buy in Denver, but that doesn't mean she doesn't know Boulder neighborhoods. She knows Boulder neighborhoods really well.
Which also, my aunt works at Fairview.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, fun trivia for you.
Huh. That is fun.
Yeah.
We might have to use that as an intelligence source in the future.
Right.
Of what's going on in Fairview.
Get the details. But that's not hype. Yeah, it is. Those was all our points. So
that's our
very
points.
nice.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
You ready for sales of the week?
Let's hit it. First one's a gorgeous home.
Well, I think all 3 of them are gorgeous homes, but
No
the
kidding.
first one is very interesting for a variety of reasons. So, Kohler Mesa, which is directly north of Table Mesa, many people think of it as part of Table Mesa because it's in the same schools. This particular spot has become a hotbed of expansive luxury home development. And by expansive, I mean like some of the homes under construction look like they're 7,000 square feet. There's some huge houses being built that are amazing. And there's some moderate and some smaller homes, of course, too. And it was probably 15 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, that a client approached me and we were comparing North and South Boulder. And one of the conclusions were that North Boulder trades at a premium, and North Boulder also has more density of these higher end homes. So the depth of market for higher end homes was much bigger in North Boulder than in South Boulder. But this listing, 2385 Kenwood, is an example of how that's changing. And it is a home that was built in 2018 on an 11,000 square foot lot, so roughly a quarter acre.
Is that like middle of the road for there, or is that a little bigger for that area?
It's big for Table Mesa proper.
Okay.
It's not big for the, I don't know,
that
20
like
home lots.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of these lots that are gigantic in this location. So I would say this is on the smaller end compared to some of those giants. And it's larger than typical for the city as a whole. You don't see, like Newland lots are more like 4,000, 5,000 square feet. So this is double that, okay? And the house itself is about 5,000 square feet. It featured 7 beds, 5 baths, a 4-car garage.
But all the way pull through. It's 2-car wide, but just mega long.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's double length.
Yeah.
So the toys go to the front, the convertible, the exotic, whatever you have that is your weekend toy car goes in the front, and your daily drivers are in the back to get out easily. That's sort of the setup for that kind of giant garage.
Yeah.
But I can tell you there's a lot of buyers, a lot of people that would like that kind of space. Maybe they could even use it for, use it for workshop space. And the house itself, so it was listed, let's talk about the deal, and then let's talk more about the house. So it had an in-ground pool. That also is extremely rare in the city of Boulder. And it was relatively unassuming on the outside. In my professional opinion, this is not an ostentatious house. It's not designed to shove affluence in your face. It's understated on the outside, and the wow factor happens on the inside. And the design of the home itself was very well executed. I don't know about the overuse of black window and doors and very white. Like, I'm starting to feel like that's a little dated at this point.
It's a little much.
And I'm not crazy about the black countertops and black kitchen cabinets and black tile in the bathroom. I mean, that sort of stuff, I'm a practical person. I'm like, well, you're going to see dirt everywhere. You're going to see white soap scum in the shower. But it's still cool. It's like an art museum in its design, and the finishes can always be improved if you're not happy with the dark colored countertops or whatever. That could be changed out at a pretty reasonable cost compared to the acquisition value and the rarity of the home. But they overpriced it when they listed. So let's talk about the deal. In January, it hit the market at 4.875. And so 4.875, or let's just call it 4.9, is pretty much top of the market for Table Mesa. That's in the top 5% of homes in South Boulder, okay, on the west side of Broadway at that price point. And there's not a lot of comps, so it's a difficult home to price. But you know that, there's a couple things. It was overpriced in some regards, and in that it didn't sell for full list. But for the higher end of the market, it is not uncommon to see a significant discount for homes that are well seasoned on market. Right. So the higher up you go in price, the bigger the percentage discount becomes for homes that don't sell immediately. If it sells immediately, it should sell for list or more. That's typical. If it is not sold in the first week or so, it will likely sell for maybe 1 to 3. And then once that's 3%, but 1 to 3% below list. And then if it's been on the market for months, right, you might expect 3 to 5% below list for sort of the mid-level home in Boulder, and the entry-level home perhaps in Boulder. But for the high end, 7 to 9% discounts from list are not uncommon. So that becomes part of the pricing strategy. If you are listing one of these high-end homes, is it's actually quite okay to price them high, knowing that when the buyers, if it doesn't sell immediately, which is likely the case. I mean, remember I told you almost 90% of homes above $3 million are not under contract in Boulder. You've got a lot of competition. If it doesn't sell immediately, eventually when it does sell, it will likely sell for a pretty substantial discount. And this one did. It sold for almost 10% below list, like 9 point something. I did the math a second ago.
Yeah.
Oh, the calculators. Oh, no, I cleared the calculator. Anyway, it's almost 10% below list, right? It sold for $475,000 below the list price. And that's a pretty substantial discount after 90 days, but it actually makes sense as a deal point. We know both the listing side and the buy side of this deal. I've done deals with both of these agents multiple times, and they're both competent. They're great agents to work with. So that's the tale of 2385 Kenwood.
Yeah. Nothing else really for me to say other than when pricing these luxury homes is almost worth kind of pricing in or factoring in the expected discount because it is a different market. Like if I were to go, this is probably an extremely reductive example, but if I was to go and sell my old phone on Marketplace and I knew it was worth whatever, $200, but I'm expecting low balls, so why don't I price it at $250 so that way when the low ball comes in, they think they're getting a deal, but I'm getting what I was expecting.
Yeah, it's similar to that, right? Like this is the conversation we have with our sellers, and we look at the competition. We also look at the sold comps. And for a home like this where there's not a lot of sold comps in a short period of time, we dial it back a few years. And we talk about how market conditions may have been different and were different in 2022. You do some time value adjustments of the price, but we know that the higher end expects a bigger discount. And the entry level gets very little discount, even if the home's been on market for a while. And so that's just part of luxury price strategy.
Them's
and it's
the
a
breaks.
Conversation. Yeah, that's the conversation you should be having with your listing agent when you are talking about pricing strategy. The price out the gate and the price adjustments that might occur with regard to how it shapes up next to the competition through the duration of the listing period. And if you're lucky and everything's done right, maybe it sells right away, right? That happens. Sometimes dumb money shows up and doesn't realize that the home the land that has these killer views is sitting in the 100-year flood and doesn't think to check, and their agent doesn't think to mention it, and they they overpay for something thinking that it has potential it really doesn't. And that happens too. So dumb money is out there, but that's the dumb money strategy for listing is not a smart one.
No.
Well, obviously.
I mean, don't hope for it. Yeah. Don't.
Well, I mean, look, you can do it. I just think that it's worth having a conversation. Like if you're like, maybe you aim for the dumb money when you first go out the gate. And then if nothing happens in the first 2 weeks,
reality check.
You quickly adjust to a much more aggressive price posture and you stay at that. You have one adjustment. And that's sort of a first quarter pricing strategy. It certainly is not a midsummer pricing strategy.
Yeah, I was going to say,
and definitely not in the fall.
Yeah, during the experimental time frame of the market, much more kosher. Yeah.
You can test the market in late winter, early spring. You cannot test the market, or you should not test the market in late summer, early fall. There's a seasonality to real estate, and especially here in Boulder, which we know very well.
All too well. All right. This one reminds us of our older listing.
You want to move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Last thing I want to say before we move away from Kenwood is that Burke Builders was the company that originally constructed the house, and they were somehow throwing in a 1-year warranty. So I think that's part of the relationship between the listing agent, because I think that's his team. And so them throwing in a 1-year warranty is kind of nice. It adds a level of confidence to the product you're buying, even when the home is 6 years old.
I was going to say,
a local builder is stepping up and saying, look, I'm going to stand by our work 6 years later. This is a very solidly constructed home, and we know it.
Very nice. Yeah. It's a good vote of confidence. And I was wrong to tee up that previous listing. That's the one after.
That's our third one, but we can move to it right now. Let's just go there since you teed it up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Why don't you introduce it since you...
Well, we had this listing back in 2022, which was a shining example of mid-century modern. And now that I think about it, I haven't seen so much mid-century modern hype as I did in 2022. It seemed to have been really popular then, the kind of style and aesthetic. But our house was 4178 Pinon, and just kitty corner of it is the sale of the week that we're discussing, 560 Inca Parkway. It's a 1964 home, and from the outside, the very few exterior photos that I'm seeing, it doesn't look like a whole lot. Though when you scroll in and dive deeper, it's actually quite a gorgeous home. The exterior photos are at the end of the stack, Oz.
Yep. I'm looking at them right now.
Yeah.
And so what Hamish is saying is the listing led with the interior shots. And whenever a listing leads with interior shots, everyone thinks something's wrong with the exterior. And the only thing wrong with the exterior of this particular house is, frankly, just the paint colors are a little dated. They don't really highlight
It looks
the
like
architecture.
An attached dwelling development in Noble Park. I can't remember the name of it, but the layout and the slopes and everything, yeah.
I mean, photo 27 kind of looks like, I don't know, a summer camp.
Mm.
Photo 28 looks like, like bunkhouses. Like the architect, I don't think the exterior photos really did this property justice as much as like the original photo, which is shown in the listing at the last photo from 1964 when the home was built. And it's a photo from the Carnegie Library. That photo really shows the way the home was designed. And it's definitely classic mid-century architecture. And as these trees grew up all around the property, it quite possibly could have been difficult to photograph the exterior.
That's what I'm thinking.
But long story short, it is another mid-century, late mid-century. 64 is usually, I don't know if that actually qualifies, but it still has that design. It's a one-story ranch. Well, actually, it's mislisted. It says it's a one-story ranch. It's not. It actually has a second story. But the second story, I think, was just the primary suite. Also known as the master suite, but we don't call it that anymore. So it's sitting on a 26,000 acre lot, which is huge. And I think this was actually built before Fraser Meadows was an actual subdivision. Although it does say it's in the subdivision of Fraser Meadows. So it's possible it was one of the larger luxury homes that were built in Fraser Meadows when the neighborhood was developed. Only 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, decent square footage, 4,800, and a 2-car attached garage. Very interesting and unique property. And the inside has been pretty extensively updated with really pretty wood paneling, nice kitchen,
kind of period correct.
Fireplace, and what's that?
Kind of like correct with period, period correct.
Well, I mean, I think there's sort of a period correct might be appropriate for like a vintage car. But the way that real estate seems to work is that you want a style that evokes that era without all the dysfunction of that era.
Right.
So like the wood paneling from the 1970s was really horrific. Really thin.
Terrible stuff. And vertical.
This does not look like that. Yeah, this is horizontal, and it might evoke that memory without the vertical weirdness of the 70s wood paneling that was in every suburban home. I just think it's a very unique property. And what's interesting is that it's mostly on the one level. The upper level square footage, let's see if they listed it properly.
I am having a hard time figuring out how it all connects with the photos.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't even put the upper level square footage in. So this is one of those frustrating things about the real estate world, is that they say the assessor records give you these things, and they just total square footage 4,800, main square footage also 4,800, but that's not accurate. When you go to the actual assessor, you can see that the finished square footage is 4,800, but they did break out. Let me get the details so we have it right.
Oh, it's a sunken living room too. Just while you're
also
doing
very
that.
hip and popular in that era.
I'm a huge fan of that.
So the garage was 560. The above ground was 4,800, which we know. And then, it doesn't actually. It says there's 4,500 on the main. So what that sounds like is there's a small 300 square foot room on the upper.
Yeah, maybe just the primary.
I mean, this is one of, and maybe this was listed because this listing agent's been around for a while. She's competent. I think this is just, she went with the tax assessor because they don't really know. And in the world of don't know, it's not actually accurate though, because you could see the difference between gross area, total on the main, and finished. In any event, it doesn't really matter. It is, I think the total finished is accurate at 4,800. And the gross does include the garage of 550. That makes sense. And one owner for a very, very long time. This person, the records date back to 1972. So I don't know if it's the first owner or the second owner, but very interesting home. And so the thing to think about is that there's a huge cohort of boomers that are now looking for homes that don't have stairs or have minimal stairs, that are mostly on one level and are spacious. And that's what this home is. It's mostly on one level. Even though that upper level room, you could convert two of the lower level rooms into a new primary suite. And it isn't quite turnkey. There's some updates clearly needed. The exterior, maybe the windows, but the overall design of the home is timeless, and the kitchen is really cool.
Yeah.
And living and entertaining areas are hip. And so this works for a lot of potential buyers. And the sunken living room thing was a cool feature from that era, which I think it'd be cool to keep, but is also not that difficult to take away too. I've seen people do that.
It's a stylish home, you know.
So it was on the market. Here's the deal notes. It listed on April 29th. It was on the market a week, and then it went under contract, and it sold for a very small discount to list. So listed at 1.85, and it sold for 1.8375. And so that's, I said, I really am not a fan. So it's like a few percent. It's a very small, let's give you the actual number. Screwed up the math on the calculator. 18375 over 1849 minus the 1. Okay, so it's not even 1%. So a little over
Negligible.
0.5% discount,
Yeah.
like a pretty, trivial discount to list, and with no disclosed concessions, cash buyer, and gone. And you had to move reasonably fast. You didn't have to get there the moment it listed, but you had to get there reasonably fast. And that's really important for this type of property. Large lot, mostly on one level, functional, maybe a few updates, and priced right.
Yeah, no. It's stylish. It looks good. It will need some love, but as it sits, I think it's a great one. Also, the locations. It's a really, I quite like that exact spot in Fraser Meadows. And maybe it's just because I'm partial from our Pinion listing, which I'll put the.
I love that.
I'll put that video in our description too.
Yeah, I loved our Pinon listing. I love that location. I particularly love those clients. They were such nice human beings and so professional and thoughtful, and just it made us work so. I mean, we work hard for all of our clients, but they were particularly endearing. And yeah, that listing that was more like 3.4, I think, or 3.2.
Yeah, 3.2. If I remember right.
Quite a difference in price for those that are counting,
and reasonably so. You see the video,
and reasonably so. There were some things about that house, particularly the second lot, and a lot more the Provence of the architecture and the architect. There was a lot more with our listing, and that's covered in our listing video. But Fraser Meadows is a great spot for those looking for that rambling ranch type property. You just have to be prepared to move reasonably quick. And let's move on to our last one.
All right.
So we're going to venture out of our fair bubble again, and this time we're heading to the city of Louisville. Louisville is a small town in Boulder County. It's only a few minutes away from the city of Boulder. Smart Money magazine rated it the best small town in America in like 2005 or 6, and ever since it's really been on the map. I always think of it as a great alternative to Boulder. It doesn't have the college kids. It doesn't have a lot of the political issues that Boulder has, and it doesn't have the degree of people experiencing homelessness. It doesn't have the problems that happen along the creek path. It does have a summer downtown, what do they call it? It's street fair, which is super family friendly and features live music, and it does have restaurants and bars and coffee shops, but the whole town turns off like with a giant switch at 9 p.m. because everyone goes to bed and has jobs and kids, and they aren't interested like the college kids in staying up late. It doesn't have the tourism that brings people to the city of Boulder. It doesn't have CU, all that stuff that it makes it distinct. And it trades at a reasonable discount to the city of Boulder. Last time I did the analysis, it was like 30%. I'm guessing it's probably closer to 20% for equivalent houses. But when I look at this one, right, it's a 4,200 square foot home built in 2018. It was listed on May 9th. It was under contract pretty much immediately, like fierce bidding war. It sold for $100,000 over list. And this is what I tell my buyers, is that Louisville is more competitive. There are fewer homes and more buyers compared to Boulder as a percentage. So the intensity of the action on a listing is much fiercer in Louisville for homes like this one. This is really close to one of our clients' houses, Hamish, that you haven't met. I won't mention their names, but they're very, very close to this. You're steps away from the downtown of Louisville. You're on a reasonable sized lot, 9,800 square feet, and newer home. It's only 6 years old, reasonable size, 4,200 square feet, 3 bedroom, 4 bath. And when you flip through the photos, it's a home that just is so well designed. It's like, I mean, I love that it's got an American flag out the front because it looks like, you know, classic American home with some really nice modern touches, like the kitchen color choices. It's so well designed that it could just be a show home. But it's not a model because there wasn't a large scale development in downtown Louisville. It's really one off. It's a custom home that just shines with excellent outdoor entertaining areas in a prime location. I mean, it just checks virtually every box. And listing agents who we've done many deals with, and I respect a lot, did a fantastic job in the photography and helping the owner prep the home. So, you know, these are the competitors. One of the competitors we like to benchmark against, Hamish. Like when we look at their photography and their staging, I'm like, they did it all right. It looks really good. Every photo is very, very curated. Even the pantry is organized, okay, for the photo. I'm sure they don't live like this. Right. This is the make-believe house, okay? And that's what we tell our clients we're creating when we make our 50-plus slide PowerPoint deck for them to improve their home and get it ready for sale. This is what they're going for, and they killed it. I mean, maybe the office bookshelves are a little cluttered, okay, a little bit much, but that's about it, right? Like you look at these photos and wow, it is dialed in. And sure enough, $100,000 over list on the market for only, like you basically had 24 hours from the time it hit the market to get your offer together.
This thing
to even have a chance at this thing.
Yeah.
And cash, no surprise, cash deal. And, you know, since commissions are public, 2.8% to the buy side. who is successful in locking this down for their client, and a home that honestly I think is going to hold its value really well, even if there's a short dip. So even if there's some really scary thing that happens to the economy next year, this is a home that is not going to go out of style. Yeah. It's classic, and it's in such close proximity to downtown Louisville. And who knows, if we ever get the make-believe train that's supposed to come, Louisville's supposed to get a stop. And you could walk from this home to the train station.
Yeah, no, it's not controversial, right? So it's going to appeal to a huge swath of buyers. Absolutely. Yeah.
So well played, one that got away, and one that required very fast movement. Yeah. So unlike the Fraser Meadows one, which the listing agent slowed down, this one, it went really fast, and the seller agreed. They might have been able, so this is the thing, right? You accept an offer with 1 day of buyers seeing it under pressure with the offer in hand. It says, look, I'll give you $100,000 above list, but you have to take our offer by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're going to close in 2 weeks, which is the close period, right? Not even. We're going to close in 10. Take my money. I will do no inspection. We close in less than 2 weeks. How do you say no to, and it's $100,000 over what you thought was maybe a little high in the list price? Yeah. Is that worth shutting the door on potential other suitors? That's the decision sellers have to face, and they have competent representation, and they probably made the right call. I think I would make that call too. If somebody said, take $100,000 over list, no inspection, take my money, and you can stay in the house for as long as you want, 60 days post-closing or whatever. Don't know that was the case, but you could, right? That's the kind of offer that's really hard to say no to, and the cost of that is an opportunity cost for other buyers who might have been lurking, and maybe they had stuff going on. I mean, it listed on the 9th, so it wasn't a holiday weekend, but there really wasn't much time for buyers to move.
Yeah.
So there you go.
To be speedy on that one.
So when I say the really desirable homes go quickly, this is what I want you to remember, is 337 Roosevelt Avenue in Louisville as an example in a market that is slowing, particularly above the 3 million mark. This is at 2.6, so it's just below it, but Louisville also sells for less than Boulder. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, you'd have to do a different different analysis to see what's luxury for Louisville.
I mean, this is clearly luxury. I would say luxury. I mean,
price point.
Rule of thumb, at 2 point. Yeah, I get it. 2.5, 2.3, maybe. I mean, where do we say the luxury? I say the luxury break in Boulder is 3. I would say, what's 30%? What was I said as a rule of thumb? So that's right around 2.7. This is right in that zone.
Yeah, right about. All right.
Would you live in this house, Hamish, or would you be?
I mean, no doubt.
Ashamed. Would you be ashamed?
I love Louisville too, so I'd happily live it. Yeah, absolutely.
Bring your date home to this house.
100%. Yeah, that's not even a question. And the community park down there is awesome. They throw a bunch of events throughout the entire summer, and there's the street fair every Friday in Louisville. I mean, it's a magical city. It's really cool. Yeah, I used to lifeguard there. Yeah.
In the wintertime, they've got the skate rink. Mm-hmm. They've got stuff going on for families, and it's just a great community. Yeah. I really like Louisville.
They worked for it and earned the accolades they get. Absolutely.
Particularly close to downtown. It is just like all the nice things you like about Boulder and almost none of the things you don't like about Boulder downtown.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a little bit smaller, but it is what it is. Yeah. All right.
So we do our in the news segment. We'll do it kind of quickly because we're already at an hour 8.
Yeah.
And we promise you a discussion of the future of AI, and we also have to talk to you a little bit about something you probably don't know. Yeah. So let's move a little faster. In the news, there's an article in the Washington Post that hit the market. That hit the headlines yesterday. Yeah, hit the press yesterday. Hit the Post. That hit whatever it hit yesterday was published. The article is titled "Real Estate Agents Are Fleeing the Field. Is That Good for Home Buyers?" And it was written by Aaron Gregg, Washington Post. We'll put a link in the description. And there's a lot in this article, but it actually starts to quantify the number of agents that were already leaving the industry prior to the commission rule change. And as the fortunes of real estate go, so do the number of agents that enter and leave. And you can see that in the chart they have, where the 2005 period, 2005, 2006, 2007 was when the last time we had a pretty big upswing. And then when the market fell apart from 2007 to 2009, it went from 500,000 agents down to 369,000 agents. So a huge reduction in the number of agents. Our business, by the way, this is pre-House Einstein, grew during this time period. It bottomed at 328,000 in 2012 and then started growing, and it reached its peak in 2019 at almost 550,000 agents.
Yeah.
And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were 440,000 in 2023, so almost 100,000 down from the peak.
Yeah,
the article
like
says 72,000 down from the year before. So huge numbers of agents are already leaving the industry. And with the commission rule change, it's going to become much harder for new agents to break in. It's going to be harder for first-time buyers to get representation.
Yeah, back to the overarching question: is this good for home buyers?
Look, let's face it, most of these agents that are leaving probably weren't good agents to begin with. And the vast majority of people that experience real estate agents don't even remember their name after 3 years, and also don't feel like they got great service.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I got into this industry. I thought, oh my God, everyone doesn't remember their agent, and their agents aren't doing a good job, and the commissions are protected. It's like a scorecard for a business you want to get into. If you can do better than these other agents. And now all these like bad agents are leaving. You know what I heard the other day is an agent tell me that they're going to increase their commission.
Yeah.
They've been in this business long enough. They're going to go from 3% representation for sellers, which is what they've been offering, to 4%. And they're going to remove so instead of it saying 5.6 or 6% in the listing agreement, it's going to say 4%. And they're going to put a big fat zero on the buy side commission. Mm-hmm. And they're just going to say that's their problem.
Yeah. Which.
And I that's a fun story.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it's going to happen, but there is going to be a lot of shenanigans where this listing agent's going to make more money than they would otherwise.
So with this article, I think the only thing that's missing for me is I wouldn't mind seeing like kind of a age breakdown for the amount of agents. I'm also wondering, like what percentage of these are people retiring? Just out of curiosity, right? Kind of thinning it out to trying to get a little bit more detail out of the data. But I mean, as it is, a serious drop.
I see opportunity, and I keep saying that to the team. I see all of these bad agents leaving, more business for the agents that are good agents, more opportunity for us to really explain our competitive advantage and the value add we have on a line-by-line basis. Less time with more people being more selective about people that are if they're looking for the discount agent, House Einstein's not the brokerage for you.
Yeah.
We are high service and full commission. And full commission is not like 4%, which is mind-blowing. We're competitive with other top agents. We're not playing shenanigans.
But we damn well
and
earn
hoping
it,
you don't. Well, you see how hard we are busting tail on listing and buy side for our clients.
Well aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Like, but there is this hatred out there of real estate agents. And honestly, some of it's deserved.
Yeah.
I would say a large portion of it is deserved. And I mean, if you want to hear the stories, go talk to a title clerk.
Yeah.
And they will tell you how bad these part-time agents have been. So, and most buyers and sellers have no idea of how much money they left on the table, how poor the service was they got, all the mistakes that had to be cleaned up by the employee broker.
This is like for the vast majority of the population. I mean, buying a house is maybe 3 times in your lifetime. It's not a often occurrence. So we see so many deals and we interact with so many agents and everything. It's obvious. It's easy for us to have this resolution of kind of what's out there and what you can see. But the general public, I mean, they have such a small sample size of personal experiences to go off of. Yeah.
I smell fear among incompetent agents and inexperienced agents, and I also see opportunity for our brokerage and our willingness to lean into even more services, even more competence, even more value add, and just do a better job of communicating it to the other side.
Yeah.
So not to the other side, but to our potential buyers and sellers. I don't want to. The other side, I know they listen to this podcast and like our content, but I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to recruit you. I'm glad that you're getting educated too. I'm happy to have people. I get comments from agents frequently that they really appreciate the podcast, but that's sort of a hidden.
It's a nice bonus
benefit. Like, it makes nice relationships with other agents. They appreciate the content.
Yeah.
But it was never intended as an agent's podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on because we are taking too long. So we're moving on, Hamish.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Osman, I don't really know who this character is.
Oh my God. Are you kidding? Are you just saying
No,
that for
I'm
fun?
serious. Keep in mind that I didn't grow up in this country. So that also could be a contributing factor.
Okay. I didn't know that when we chose this article. So let me read the article and then we'll talk about Hamish's lack of knowledge of who Paul Rubens was. So Pee Wee Herman was his most famous role. And Pee Wee's Playhouse was a TV show I grew up with as a child. Although I was a little old for Pee Wee's Playhouse. So I was right at probably the end of the viewership age of Pee Wee's Playhouse. But I remember seeing it on TV. And Pee Wee as a character was absolutely hilarious. The Pee Wee's Playhouse TV show transitioned to Pee Wee's Great Adventure, which involved bicycling, which I've got a huge passion for. So Pee Wee was hilarious, and then Pee Wee got into trouble at some point in an adult theater. And that was also news. Probably when I was in my 30s. We won't go into any further detail on that. But his house is for sale. He paid $415,000 for it. This is an article in the Journal, and it's listed for just under $5 million, which, if you're curious, is roughly about a 6.5% appreciation rate, excluding any capital investment he put in. And when you look at the photos, you see lots of improvements. Clearly, are not original. So it's obviously his return was lower than 6.5%, assuming the house sells for list. And it's just a cool house, and it's well staged. Although I don't know, the cat patio is cool, but I'm a little annoyed with the listing photo showing concrete blocks randomly in place.
Yeah. No, it's like the patio's cool, but the color is strange, and like the finishes are, it's dated, right?
It is. I mean, the choices of wallpaper are playful and
Definitely
interesting. But there's aspects of the home that are just classic mid-century design, and it's really pretty. And you could change wallpaper.
Yeah, I love the rafters.
That's easy,
right? In this one lounge picture that I can see, that's just exquisite. It's gorgeous. Yeah.
So anyway, we thought it was a cool story. It's only a 3,000 square foot house, very modest, in a nice neighborhood in LA, and it's on the market. Pee Wee died last year. Rest in peace, Pee Wee. You were one of my childhood characters, I guess you could say.
Staples.
Yeah, staples. Check out the bedroom division between sort of the powder room and the bedroom. I mean, I think it's a very tasteful house with some minor updates. But cool that Pee Wee's house is on the market. So if you want it, it's listed at $5 million. Talk to an agent in LA. Let's move on.
All right. Onwards.
So all these buyers are fleeing, and at the same time, we're about to see some very interesting tools in real estate that are AI driven and that we already use, don't we?
For the most part. Yeah, I mean, we use the ones that work, right? We don't just blindly trust whatever says AI. We vet it and make sure that it's okay and double check on it. But we do use AI.
Well, just like if you went to a doctor. So I'll never forget this. We went to a doctor. I'm not going to go into details on what it was for. This is a long time ago. And the doctor listened to us, and he said, and then he turned and started typing into Google our symptoms. And I'm like, what is happening? If I could type it into Google, why am I paying you to type it into Google? I think we had mentioned some drug he didn't know.
Okay.
He was typing that in. And it was very because
there's
head-scratching.
the whole brand name thing and a whole bunch of weird stuff with pharmaceuticals, but...
Well, what's going to happen is you'll go to a doctor and you'll meet with the PA or the nursing assistant or somebody that will take down your information and enter it into something like ChatGPT, that will then give the doctor who has 5 minutes to see you some baseline information in a very organized fashion without to sit down and talk to you as a human for 20 minutes. But you as a patient want to meet with a doctor who's the expert, who's going to offer you insight and perhaps a treatment protocol.
Right.
And in real estate, we're not doctors. Obviously, we don't have the education or the skill set to diagnose you medically, but the really good real estate agents are incredibly knowledgeable about the local market. They know about negotiation norms. They can advise you on due diligence, and they will end up with tools that make their life easier, right? And we were just talking about a fire score risk at my Rotary Club, and it's with a third-party provider. I would love to have that as an independent little screen. We go look at a house.
Yeah.
It's not from the MLS. It grabs some basic facts and figures, but it's not trying to sell you on anything. It's giving you like an investment score, a fire risk score. It's not a make-believe bike score. Like, I want real tools, and tools to be able to write the contract faster, tools to help us on negotiation. Like, I would like to know, how long has the competitor been in the market? How long has this listing agent been in business? What were the past
and that
deals I
served
did
to you.
with
You
this
don't
listing agent?
look it up, right? You don't want to have to be able to search it.
There will be all sorts of AI tools that could be really advantageous. Right now, here are the tools we use. We use AI in Photoshop and in Adobe Premiere all the time. We use AI to help us write better listing descriptions, but we don't rely solely on AI. It's just listing descriptions are not novel. They're not prose. They're not a poem. And the tool from AI can help us write a more concise, easily digestible 2,000 character description of the home that is attractive in generally accepted ways for marketing pros. That's really useful. It doesn't have to be. AI can help with all of that, but AI cannot, at this point, really dial in on valuation. They don't really understand humans and why one home might see that 100,000 over, like that home in Louisville. I don't think AI is going to get there when you go and write the offer to say submit 100,000 to get this house. That's going to take a human to negotiate it. So negotiation skills are going to become even more important.
Too, yeah.
Just say more.
I mean, you're looking at like you're talking about like valuations and everything there. I mean, we talk about going to see competitors in person because that matters, and we won't have androids really anytime soon, I don't think. And even then, there's a lot of details and feelings, and kind of, even if it's not visual, we can get put off by a cold breeze or a damp home, or we talked in another pod about a home that we could just tell was in a marsh, but AI wouldn't pick that up. So there are quite a few kind of qualitative things that AI, I think, will still miss out on going forwards.
I think AI is going to make our photography and videography process 10 times faster within 2 years. Like, rather than individually dragging sliders to get the right look and feel, we're going to say, AI in Photoshop,
give me some LA Noir or something.
Please adjust all of these photos to make it look like the one that we like. And it's just going to click a button and do them all. Yeah. And right now we could hire companies for a few $100s to do photography, but we do better with our own photography because we really get granular and we want these homes to shine. And that process takes a few hours at a minimum to go through the photo stack.
Yep. Yeah, it sure does.
And what if it was 5 minutes?
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think AI could do that.
Yeah. No, I was
late
more
podcast
talking
and my wife just arrived.
Nice. Yeah.
You're saying?
Oh, no, I think that kind of stuff is going to be pretty attainable for AI. I'm just more talking about, like in-person things and, competitive benchmarking, that kind of stuff. Down to the street level, right?
There are some things that I think AI will be able to do, just like speeding up the information for the doctor, the contract writing, the media presentation, the listing description, but the pricing and the negotiation, which I feel like are very much our skill set, will be very difficult for AI to
what's the term, like quintessentially human or something? Like the things that are extremely human to us, and negotiation is one of those things. I think that's going to stay ours. Yeah.
Like, there's certain agents that I know the deal's going to go well because they have great communication. They represent the other side really well and fairly. And so I can trust this transaction is not going to have shenanigans because they're a really good agent. and that agent's going to sit. So every time you take risk off the table, you change. There's a price relationship with risk. So if we had two identical offers and one of them is with an agent I know and trust and has behaved ethically and behaved well, versus an agent that is an unknown and new to the industry.
Yeah, you already have that kind of like initial distrust, right? Because they're a stranger.
Right.
Yeah.
Who do we know that? Who do we think is going to win the bidding war? There's going to be value add for agents that just like in medicine, you're not going to want to go to a computer, punch in your own symptoms and have it spit out the results. You're going to want a human to look at this, and you're going to want a human to look over your contract.
Trust but verify.
You're going to want a human to handle the negotiation. You're going to want a human to walk through the house and help you with due diligence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think there's a ton of uses, and I mean, I've started using it. I've been using it since 2022 for bits and bobs here and there, and personal and work, and there's plenty of spots where it gets it completely right, and then plenty of spots where it 100% misses the ball. So super interesting, but I don't know. I haven't seen any crazy new developments with it in recent times. I've kind of seen it just more pushed down the general public's throats more than any crazy innovations. Like I don't know if you've seen it, but there was this thread a while ago about all of the Google AI results that have come through, because they're combing through Reddit, and Reddit's got a bunch of incorrect results. So now AI is just returning people like terrible advice.
Right.
Yeah, I mean I sit kind of with the crew that's a little bit that preaches caution and kind of intentional implementation versus just throwing it everywhere. And I know it's getting a lot of money right now, especially in the market, and there's a ton of VC money for it, but I really want to kind of push for caution on it, especially its rollout.
Well, I do believe that the speed of improvement will result in AI that's smarter than the average human, probably
Inherently.
within 2 years, if not even faster. And the average agents aren't really doing that great of a job to begin with, so the tools will fall to the agents that survive the shakeout, and the tools will be really powerful tools. But I don't think that they will replace agents, because you can't do a real estate transaction. Well, you can.
A hammer's not going to build a house, but a good builder with a hammer could, right? You know,
right, or whatever tool. Right. I met with painters this week, and there's a whole bunch of trim that needs to be replaced on this particular house, and I can see the work that needs to be done, but I also know the tools. Yeah. Because I've worked in the trades, and the tools that have gotten so good, like the plunge cutting tools, the reciprocating, it's like the vibrating plunge cut. I'm like, would make this a 10-minute job to replace this particular section of rotted trim. You don't have to tear apart the whole wall. You could just cut into this one section. It's like a surgical tool for a house. And so the tools are going to get way, way better. I don't think agents are going to disappear entirely, but no one really knows. And House Einstein will just adapt. We're going to, as a team, get ready for the roller coaster, and it's happening pretty darn fast.
Yeah, and also when you're touched on the listing description side of things, I mean, you can see when people paste it into GPT and then grab it and then don't touch it. Like I almost call it like an accent, or like a writing style, right?
Yeah.
It's
kind of embarrassing. Yeah. It's sort of like when they grab the fake twilight shot, the fake sunset,
the Photoshop
and apply it
sky replacement.
And it looks really bad, and it's because the contrast levels are so different. Like, your eye can see this image is wrong. Yeah. It may capture your attention, but for somebody that knows anything about photography, you can quickly see that it's a fake sunset. Yeah. And it's just sad.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But if you're thinking about interviewing an agent, ask them what AI tools they use. We're happy to talk about what AI tools we use.
And caution around an agent that tells you they use a really nifty algorithm. Just caution there.
Yeah. AI cannot walk into the competitor listings. Yeah. Do not. So for pricing,
and that's what I was trying to get at too at the start, right? You got it.
AI is fine as the automated valuation methods, or AVM, or whatever they're called, which is AI-driven, algorithm-driven Pricing is great as a starting point for the conversation, but it is not the price you should list your home at ever. There's this way too much distinction, as we've seen.
Oh yeah, down to the street, man. Down to the lighting, down to the tree placement. There's so much.
They're trying to look They're trying to look cool and hip by showing you an AI tool for pricing. Mm-hmm. It is not accurate.
Don't get caught up in all the buzzwords.
Okay. All right, so let's hit the last section, Hamish, because holy cow, this podcast is at an hour 30.
No kidding.
But we have one last section.
We are teeing ourselves up for longest podcast, I think.
Are you going to survive?
I'm making it. I got half a bottle of water left, so we got this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this last section is called Tell Me Something I Don't Know. And the concept of this segment in our podcast is to help buyers and sellers understand some of the stuff that goes on in the industry in real estate. And in particular, we're talking about Colorado, but this does apply probably on a national level as well, because in general, real estate, residential real estate, and I think it's true of commercial too, is largely self-regulated. There is regulation at the state level, but competency is self-regulated. So, for example, the license that Hamish and I both have allows us to work with buyers and sellers of land, work with buyers and sellers of farmland, mountain property, commercial real estate, investment property. It even allows us to negotiate leases. And leases aren't even a DORA-approved contract, which is our state regulator.
Yeah.
And so the reason this is relevant is that there are a lot of agents out there that when they have an opportunity to do a deal in a market segment they don't know a lot about, will take the opportunity and not advise their client that they actually don't know that much about this particular type of real estate transaction. What they're supposed to do is say, look, I don't really know much. You should probably find an agent that does know a lot about this particular type of thing, and let me help you find it, and I might earn a referral fee from that. That's what they should do. But instead, what many will do is, hey, man, no problem. I'll help you find a farm. I know a lot about water rights.
So
no
how
problem.
should an agent learn then?
Great question. So I do know quite a bit about commercial real estate, for example. But when I get a commercial real estate client, I usually refer the deal out. But if the deal is particularly interesting or the client relationship is deeply trusting with me and they would like me to be part of this transaction, I'll partner with this other agent at a different brokerage that we usually refer business to. And that agent's very straight talker, also a Rotarian. He's honest, he's got integrity, and we would figure it out. But I would use that as a learning curve to get into commercial, because commercial is clubby. The reason we don't do a lot of commercial is not because I don't understand the contracts. I do. It's because
it's clubby.
The clubbiness of the deal, of the network, right? And by the way, commercial has always had commissions are written into the contract. They're not on the MLS, just as a little footnote for you people out there that are wondering how the industry is going to survive. Commercial is the future for residential.
And has been just fine.
More hidden behind the scenes of what's actually happening, but being a player in the space is important in commercial. And so the competency in the contract, understanding what a commercial property is not the value add. You really should be in the club to understand. You need to understand a lot more. And even better if you're a commercial real estate investor yourself, because now you're really in the game. So that's why, for the most part, I would refer out commercial, even at least once a year. Somebody asks me if I do commercial.
Right? Like, then you can learn alongside or kind of get a little bit of your chops in without necessarily taking on the full risk. And what I think you kind of started off too is essentially lying or omitting information or kind of glossing over your experience with a particular field or sect to your clients. And that's not what you'd be doing. So,
look, there's so many of these brokers out there that don't know what they're doing. They just got into the business. They don't have adequate mentors. They're employing brokers doing questionable things themselves. And doesn't ask them how many. So if this person is new in the industry and they're working for a big brokerage, they're employing brokers responsible for huge numbers of agents. They don't have the bandwidth to coach and mentor and train. And experienced agents don't often want to coach and mentor and train either. Like in the first few years of House Einstein, I took on new agents. And I thought that would be a good model. We'll coach, mentor,
Super
and train,
fun,
and maybe they'll survive. And it'll be fun, and they'll value the coaching. And instead, the opposite was true. The hit rate of success was really low. They don't know what they're paying for. They get upset with the split structure. And it's like, it's not worth it. We would never take a new agent at this point. If you're a new agent, don't call me. I'm sorry. I don't coach and mentor and train new agents. You're welcome to listen to the podcast. And after you've been in the business 3 to 5 years, if you really feel like you're a good fit, let's have a conversation. Be prepared to hear no, because most people are not a good fit for our brokerage. We are so different. And I get that request at least once or twice a year from agents that are thinking they want to join. Most of the time, the answer is no. So the self-regulatory aspect of competency is unique to the real estate industry. Imagine you're a doctor and you decide you just want to get into plastic surgery. I think I can do it. My dad's a doctor, and Dad, if you're listening to this, don't take this the wrong way, but when you came out of heart surgery, okay, and you had gotten a stent put in, the first thing you said was, I could do that. That was no big deal. And I'm like, Dad, yeah, you could, but
he's a doctor, not a surgeon, right? Just really quick.
Well, okay, yes. But the point I'm trying to make is that if all you do is heart catheterizations with stents, you're going to be really competent, right, in doing that. And just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it as you're like on yourself, especially, but even on anybody else. So having the skill is not the same thing as having done many transactions in the space. So if you want to become competent in a particular area of real estate, like commercial real estate, warehouses, office buildings, there's all this segmentation. You should join a brokerage that does a lot of those types of deals and become mentored by somebody who does those deals. That's the only way to get competency. You should not pretend to be competent in the space that you're not. You shouldn't be advising people on short-term rentals unless you know the short-term rental regulatory environment. You understand the economics, the property management rules, the licensing. You shouldn't be doing any of those things unless you're actually already competent. And so, and you get to decide in real estate, unlike the medical world, where you actually need to have
regulations,
board licensed, right? Where you have to be licensed and have done a residency in that particular specialty to call yourself that specialty. You're not just because you think you can do it.
Yeah, I remember I was, I think I just turned 18, and I was looking at commercial real estate, and my grandpa had me meet with one of his old friends that was like pretty dang established in commercial real estate. And looking back on it now, I was like, I was 18, right? I never took it any further. I never rolled the ball. I didn't do anything. But that would have been some good experience to have now, right? Looking back, so yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, no kidding.
Youth.
That's 2020. Yeah.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, 100%.
And at 18, what would you have the competency to offer, a successful commercial broker besides getting coffee and administrative
it's like
filing?
at that point I was going to school to get my license and had worked at an office for a little bit, but I didn't have any true experience. It was more like cold calling, so I wouldn't really count it. Yeah, it would have been a tough sell. Yeah.
So if you're thinking about hiring somebody in a specialty area of real estate, don't just, especially if they're new, don't just believe them when they say they can do it. Ask about their past experiences and what sort of transactions they were involved in and how they advised their buyer or seller that had this particular type of property in this particular type of location. Ask for some examples. Have them walk you through it. And if it sounds like they just got their license yesterday and they're relying on somebody else's competency or the competency of their brand illusion, like, hey, I'm with whatever, I'm not going to name the brokerages, but I'm with this giant brokerage and therefore I'm confident. Look at all the deals this brokerage does. That's not competency. That's the brokerage. That's not them. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. We've hammered this one into the ground, Hamish. Let's do the wrap up and let our poor listeners off the hook.
All right. Let me just get down here. Well, listeners, I think this may be second last or second longest podcast we've had, or something along those lines. But if you made it this far, we deeply appreciate your listening. We sure have a blast recording these, putting together the topics, and talking throughout the week about what we will be talking about. So it's a bunch of fun putting it together, listening or hearing, reading, your comments, seeing the likes, kind of seeing those views go. That's really rewarding, and we're super appreciative that you guys are out there listening to us. And if you'd like to talk to us a little bit closer, perhaps you have some real estate needs of your own, check us out at houseeinstein.com. And don't forget to check out our other socials. So if you're listening to this audio only, check out our YouTube, absolutely. You get to see our smiling faces. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, check out our other socials. Same with the podcast only listeners. Check out our Instagram, check out our Facebook. We've got a LinkedIn. It's there. But check out we've got an X as well, or Twitter. Check us out. Yeah, give us a follow, see what we're about, and we're always here, happy to help if you need us.
Thank you so much for listening, listeners and fans. Deeply appreciate you all. If you have ideas for podcasts, comments about the podcast, you know where to reach us. Please like and subscribe. It does help us get the word out. And we hope you found this content deeply, deeply humorous and enjoyable, because that's what this podcast is. It's humor.
And I was going to say, I hope you made a smarter real estate decision, but that's not very humorous, is it? So this is really an entertainment podcast.
Right. What can be really funny is watching all the bad decisions being made. Yeah. But in any event, thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time.